it's hard. So that's why I say, make the sincere effort and try to figure out a way to connect with anybody who might be using your product or service that has a disability. Make it clear that while you may not be doing it right, it's not out of lack of concern. It's not out of malice. It's just, I don't understand. I'm overwhelmed. I'm afraid. I don't have the time, whatever your answer is. But, I'm one of these people. I'm big on honesty, on conversations, on collaboration. I really believe that if we ever want to have a truly accessible digital world, then we have to focus more on communication and collaboration and less on legal actions and shame.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. Maxwell, known around the world as the Blind Blogger, has been an online serial entrepreneur for over 15 years, starting in his family's carnival business, then progressing to sell used amusement equipment online, and finally becoming an accessibility advisor. He's a contributing writer to several publications on accessibility. He'll be launching the Accessibility Advantage podcast, where he will be interviewing business leaders so they can share their stories of growing their business by embracing accessibility. So Maxwell, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Good morning. I really appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm looking forward to us having a great conversation today and hopefully showing some business owners how they can leverage the accessibility advantage.
Perfect. And before we get into questions that I have for you on this topic, I'd love for you first to just share your story of how you became the Blind Blogger and began teaching others on accessibility.
Well, those are actually two different stories, but I'll try to keep them both brief.
Okay.
In 2003, my dad passed away. Shortly after that, our carnival went out of business. I needed something to do, so I started helping people sell used rides on the internet. I had to learn so many new things, including teaching myself to code HTML, and people found that inspiring and encouraged me to share more about being a blind entrepreneur. So I started a second website as the Blind Blogger, which was a name people had been using for me as a sort of shorthand on LinkedIn and Facebook. Because quite frankly, if you are somebody with a disability, most likely you are the only person with a disability in your social group, family, community, whatever. So I became the Blind Blogger because I was blind and a blogger, obviously. Nowadays, I'm much more than a blogger, but that's where we started. As for accessibility, I've just recently discovered from Alex Sanfilippo, who's the founder of Podmatch, where we met, that I've been an accessibility expert all my life. I just didn't realize it or get paid for it, because when you operate businesses online and you have a disability, you're always educating people about problems with their website, how they can make things better for you. I think the real difference is a couple of years ago, I was invited to become a contributing writer for AudioEye.com, and then asked by them to do some quality assurance site reviews for accessibility. And from there, I was invited to write for Reviewed Magazine, doing product evaluations about accessibility for people with vision loss, and also to write for PHP Architect Magazine. And these just happened over time. In each case, I had to be convinced that I was the expert they were looking for. And in the case of AudioEye, I had 4 interviews with them, including one with the COO, before I finally said, okay, y'all are right, I'm wrong. Y'all obviously know what you're looking for, and you're a successful company, so I'm going to believe you're right and just say thank you and do the work. So that's the Blind Blogger and accessibility. But I think the more important part about accessibility is there are a lot of people who talk about the subject, but they generally come at it from the point of view of the potential punishments, the lawsuits, the regulatory fines that you may face in some countries, the potential bad publicity, social media shaming. And to me, I feel like that's the wrong approach, because business owners don't do things because they're what they should do. Business owners generally do stuff because it's in their best interest. So to me, we have to give a business owner the why, explain to them why should they care, and then try to make it easier for them as far as how do they implement, because quite frankly, there is a huge amount of overwhelm and fear around implementing accessibility once you decide it's something that you believe your company should be doing. So here's my 2 top reasons why people should care about accessibility. Number 1 is when you design products, services, and content for everyone, you include people with disabilities, people representing minority groups. The more people you include in that process, the better you make it for everyone. So quite often things that you will do to improve accessibility will make things better for your able-bodied customers or clients. To me, one of the best examples I have is when people will break up a form into smaller pieces for accessibility and then find out just how much easier that makes it for people to navigate their sites using mobile devices. And the easier we make it for people to navigate those forms, I mean, where do forms lead? Forms lead to credit cards. Forms lead to checkouts. The easier we make those forms for blind people, for hearing impaired people, for people with physical disabilities that are using devices that they manipulate by things other than their fingers, the easier we make it for everybody else. And the smoother that process is, the less, what is that phrase they're using now? Cart abandonment? The less cart abandonment, I mean, because I mean, if the process bothers the person to the point where they're like, I would really like to buy this shirt or this book, but I just don't want to spend any more time on this form, and that's something that happens more often when you have a disability. But if you can solve for disability, then you can solve for everything else. That's the number 1 why. The second why, which I don't think we emphasize enough as a disability community, is that it gives you the opportunity to reach a huge, mostly untapped market of highly loyal consumers who will advocate for you based on your providing a quality product and service in an accessible manner. So there's over 1 billion people globally that have at least one disability, if not multiple disabilities. If you're not somebody who's plans on reaching a global market, here in the United States, if you take the 1 in 7, which is the generally agreed on percentage or ratio, you take 1 in 7 out of 350 million Americans, that's 50 million people. And that's just the beginning of it, because you see, we will tell everybody. So when you invest a little more time and effort and care to make your products and services accessible, you not only make me want to do business with you, but I'm going to tell my friends, my families, my coworkers, my social media connections. I like to say that when you include people with disabilities, it's like hiring influencers you don't have to pay.
That's a good point. I think, though, too, as you were talking at first, too, about people wanting to penalize and, say you're not doing this correctly and, coming at it from that perspective, I just think people don't necessarily know that they're not meeting those guidelines, right? Like, we're not website designers. We hire someone else to do it for us. And so we don't know that our website isn't necessarily set up for, the ease of reading or, being able to play, sounds that you can hear text or anything like that. Like, we just don't know. Right. And so I think it's, like you said, coming from the perspective of even just like educating people so that they understand, like, this is kind of what you need to look for to make sure that you do have accessibility. So that's, I think, my perspective as someone who, as a business owner, has so many things that we're trying to do and do them well. We can't do them all, right? So we have to have help, and we don't always know what we don't know.
Exactly. And I had a smile on my face when she was saying this. And I mentioned that for our audio, for people that would be listening to this as opposed to watching it, because you said one of the things that I believe and that is becoming more widely agreed on by people with disabilities. I understand. Most people like me understand you're not doing this out of malice. A lack of accessibility is not a conspiracy among the able-bodied to keep people with disabilities from being able to buy a T-shirt that they particularly want to have. It's not something you're doing on purpose. It's a lack of understanding, and it's also a lack of time. Like you say, there are so many things. Even now, this is like 10 years later since I started as the blind blogger. Even now, I will have hosts ask me, Max, when you consider all that goes into having a blog or a podcast, how does a blind person even do that? Because it wears me out as a sighted person to have a blog or a podcast or to be a self-published author. So I understand it. And I think that's one of my most valuable assets, because I did have to build a website with HTML. I have had to migrate that website to another website to WordPress. I have done social media. I've had to do all of these different jobs myself. I've gotten help, but I haven't progressed to the point where I have a regular paid team to do some of those things. And it can be very overwhelming. And sometimes when you make that list of all the things you have to do and the things that you know how to do and the things you're going to hire somebody to do, deciding to make accessibility an important thing, even in that hiring conversation with that webmaster, is just one more thing on a list that's already a mile too long to start with.
Exactly. Well, are there any tips that you can give to us as small business entrepreneurs too about how we can successfully implement accessibility on these digital platforms?
Right. Well, first thing is keep it very simple. The less items, the fewer fancy widgets or plugins that you're using, the better. The fewer items on a menu, the better. Which is actually even more important to people using screen magnification or people who have other disabilities than it is for somebody like me who depends on a screen reader. It's very helpful if you design from the point of view that your users will be using a keyboard and not a mouse, because one thing most people I talk to still don't understand now is that in order to add these adaptive technology options, quite often you have to eliminate the mouse in order for those accessibility features to work. So sometimes I can simulate a mouse click, but I can't always. And usually when the times that I can't simulate a mouse click is when I've gotten to the end of a form or and I'm trying to press that last button that says submit or approve your purchase, and I can't. So design simple, approach it keyboard first. You can always have those additional mouse options, but it's great if you can offer keyboard alternatives to those. One thing most everybody knows about nowadays is having alternative text for your images, and most website builders and most content management systems like WordPress, like Drupal, like Umbrag, they all have a thing that will prompt you to add the alternative text to your images. But it's still, even that is a bit of a chore, because there isn't a way to just add those alternative text descriptions to your images and have them travel with the image every time you add that image to a website, a blog post, or a social media post. So the fact that you as a business owner, every time you post that image, you have to go in and manually type a description for people using screen readers and for people using the voice to text devices like Alexa or Google. It's just one more thing that makes it more challenging on the entrepreneur who is trying to do the right thing. So I would say that one is important. Another thing is, if you are not comfortable with your ability to create things for your digital platform, then don't create them. Don't rebuild the wheel or reinvent the wheel, as they say, because I can't tell you how many times I have a problem with an app, say like a scheduling app or a form, and I'm like, this is really frustrating. I have to reach out to the person and I have to ask them for help with it. And I'm thinking to myself, why couldn't they have just used DocuSign for a form? Why couldn't they have just used for a signature on a contract? Why couldn't they have just used Google Forms to create their form? Or why couldn't they just have used Calendly or Acuity for their, why did they have to build something new that isn't accessible? Because they may know about building apps or websites, but they don't know about making those processes accessible. So I would say, if you're really comfortable with your abilities, then fine, you create all the new stuff you want. But there's lots of great tools that already exist that have been time tested for accessibility. And Google represents quite a few of them. Microsoft is starting to catch up as their narrator and other text-to-speech options are starting to get better. But I would say that's another thing is don't reinvent the wheel. Don't make things harder on yourself. I know that it's tempting to because there are a lot of experts out there who say that you really should be doing those things because then you own the product or you own the resource. But if your goal is to make your website, your app accessible, then stick to stuff that's already been tested and out there a long time.
Right.
And I'm sure you've run into a lot of that when you talk to clients about their businesses, because there's always a new content management or client management system. There's always a new payroll. There's always a new something because somebody wants to be that next online or Silicon Valley millionaire or billionaire. So there's always somebody with something new. I mean, I told you before we started recording, this is the first time I've used this particular recording platform, and I was pleasantly surprised that I didn't have any issues with my technology getting logged on with you. But by saying that, I pretty much told you that whenever I use something new, I kind of expect there to be issues with the technology. So, and I would say one other thing is, if you have the ability to add people to your team, whether that be an informal team or a staff of paid people, then try to add people to your circle who represent some of the disabilities. Some people like me, they do this for a living, but there are a lot of people out there who would be willing to share their knowledge, mainly because they just feel like every time they share their knowledge, it makes the world online just a little more accessible for everybody else. So there are government agencies, there are nonprofit organizations, there are social media communities. There are lots of places where you can find the information you need to start working on accessibility. But here's what I would say. Don't overwhelm yourself. And you know how I mentioned not trying to find new solutions? One thing I realized from talking to some of the people I'll be interviewing for my podcast, The Accessibility Advantage, is that successful business people, they approach accessibility the same way they approach any other problem in their business. And they say, okay, if I had a problem with accounts payable and I had outstanding invoices, how would I solve that? Or they'll say, if I had a problem finding quality employees, how would I solve that? And then they'll say, I have a problem with accessibility. This is our usual way to solve important problems in the business. We are going to apply this process to this problem as if it's no different than any other issue in the company. And so I think that really has helped people when I explain it, because I think that sadly, my community does a very poor job in this area because we tend to make it seem like accessibility is a foreign country, an alien language, something that requires years and extensive training in order to be able to make a website or a blog accessible. And like anything else, the more training experience you have, the better. But solve for it the way you solve anything else. And one of the really cool things for small business owners, at least, is the idea of progress is more important than perfection is really starting to become a thing among people with disabilities. It's not meeting the arbitrary rules in, say, like the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines or the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's about making continued sincere effort. And as long as you're making sincere effort, and of course, letting people know that you're making a sincere effort, then the odds are you're going to be fine. And people will probably come along once they realize that you're open to making things more accessible and offer you some suggestions. I find quite often that when I talk to business owners about a website or an app I'm having trouble with, they will say, Mr. Ivey, you're the first blind person that we've ever heard from that is using or trying to use our product. Mm. And I know I'm not the only one. I'm just the first one that's ever taken the time to reach out to them. And I'm usually the one who reaches out to them in a positive, non-threatening manner of, okay, I'm having a problem. I'm not going to tell the business owner what my solution is. I'm going to explain to him or her what my problem is and try to work with them to come up with a solution. Sometimes, and this has happened quite often in my experience, and it's not something that a lot of people in the disability community would endorse, but I love it. Sometimes the best solution for accessibility is done for you, is making it clear on your website that you understand people with disabilities may visit your website and may have trouble with your website, as you would love to have a conversation with them or an email exchange with them to address any issues they're having with your product, service, or content. I mean, I have, in fact, I've been using Podmatch since it started. The first year I used it, I had to have Alex and Alicia create my profile because that part of the site was not accessible. Did I get mad at them? Did I shame them on social media? Did I stop using or decide not to use their platform? No. I said, this is what I need. And they said, well, this is what we can do. And so for a year or so, they created and then updated and modified my profile. And of course, now they've made great strides in accessibility with my help. And so now I can manage pretty much everything on the platform. And if I have a problem, I have a direct line to the head of the development team where I can say, okay, this isn't working, or your last update created a problem with something that was working. We need to figure out how to do this. So done for you, done with you, having a conversation so you understand the needs of your audience that happens to have a disability. And then, like I say, work towards it. Progress, not perfection. Sincere effort, not so much minimum arbitrary rules. And I feel like that's where I can help the business owners, especially the small business owners most, because I've been there. My family ran a carnival that most years probably would have been considered a hobby by the Internal Revenue Service. I mean, we were not very successful much of the time, but we managed to get from year to year. So I understand there are money pressures, there are time pressures, there are family pressures, there are the constant changes of whatever market it is that you're working in. And the technology is always changing as well. And then you throw into that, there are so many different people with different types of disabilities who use different types of technology at different levels of ability. It's hard. So that's why I say, make the sincere effort and try to figure out a way to connect with anybody who might be using your product or service that has a disability. Make it clear that while you may not be doing it right, it's not out of lack of concern. It's not out of malice. It's just, I don't understand. I'm overwhelmed. I'm afraid. I don't have the time, whatever your answer is. But, I'm one of these people. I'm big on honesty, on conversations, on collaboration. I really believe that if we ever want to have a truly accessible digital world, then we have to focus more on communication and collaboration and less on legal actions and shame.
Right. So you talked earlier too about some of the adaptive technology like screen readers and voice to text. Can you tell us maybe the types of things that are used and how they're used so we can understand a little bit more too, that might help us be able to implement on our side things that will make it easier for that to be used?
Okay. So for people with vision loss, there are two options. You're looking at people who have some vision that use a screen magnification system. And I'm sure some of y'all have probably used the Zoom feature on your phone or your tablet. And when it comes to magnification, people who use that really need simple websites with as few items on each page as possible, because the larger they have to expand the image, the less they can see of any part of the screen or any part of your website. So the other thing you really want to do for people like that is you want clear, bold text. You want to make sure there's spacing not only between the letters and between the words, but also between the lines of text, which is sometimes a little more difficult to do, but you want to check your font and make sure, because as you expand that text up to, say, 6 or 8 or 10 times its regular size, that text is going to blur. And so having the extra space above, below, and between means that when they expand that text, they'll still be able to read it clearly, even if it does take them longer to read it and navigate it. For people with people who are like me, who have almost no vision or very limited vision, we tend to use screen readers, or what would be called text-to-speech software. And basically, it can only tell me what the website designer told it. So if you don't describe images through the alt text, then I don't know the image is there. But what's worse is if you've attached that image to a button or a link, then I don't know the button or link is there either. It's as if it does not exist. It's like the invisible man has thrown his formula over the top of it. I just go right past it. So if you're using an image with the button to sign up to your email list, for example, then I'm probably not going to be able to find that button. I may be able to find the information that says something about your email list, but I won't be able to subscribe. Like I say, you have to tell the computer what it needs to tell me. So alt text for images. Something that's not as common, but I would love to see more of it. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be hired out. It could just be a very simple, is something called audio description. And this can apply to videos as well as to audio. And I mentioned before we started recording, I was going to give you a sample of this at some point, because I feel like it really is important to podcasters and to people who do interviews as a rule. And a lot of business owners are doing interviews to share their knowledge and promote their businesses. So, for example, I am a large, older white male. I'm very Caucasian. I have medium length curly brown hair, brown eyes, short lashes. I am currently wearing a button-down shirt that I've been told is anywhere from a brownish red to a reddish pink. And colors are another thing that challenge people with vision loss. But sitting in a faux brown office chair in my bedroom recording this. And I believe the headphones I'm wearing are black. But I'm not 100% sure on that, because I haven't asked recently. And, headphones, headphones are kind of fragile. They change all the time. So audio descriptions in your videos. So like you record an interview with somebody, or say you record a video of a product that you're wanting to sell. You can go into that and insert audio descriptions when people aren't talking, that can be played when people are using adaptive software like VoiceOver which is the screen reader for Apple, is VoiceOver. The screen reader for Windows is either JAWS or a open source free one called NVDA. So there are ways to add the audio descriptions, just like there are ways to add the closed captioning. And so that's excuse me. So alt text, audio descriptions for video and for audio, because quite frankly, people that are listening to our podcast, they can't see us either. So I'm trying to think other things that people need to tell. The website needs to be told, or the screen reader needs to be told, not only what the name of a link is, but where that link will deliver you to. And quite often I'll see people who either don't label their links, or they let the site builder label their links, and they either all have the same name or they have numbers, which means that I have to try each link and figure out where they go, kind of like back when they used to teach us all to count steps. And it's not fun. It's the kind of thing that'll make me wonder if there's somewhere else I can go and get the same information or the same product or service. So labeling your buttons, labeling your links, testing your forms to make sure they work. Now, one question that often comes up in this area, especially from small business owners, is the issue of automation or of what's sometimes referred to as overlays or widgets. Now, there are automation tools you can get. There's a great one that's free called Waves, like in Waves in the Ocean. I mentioned that I write for audioi.com. They offer a paid program, but they also have a free website checker on their website. Now, if you use the free checker, you're going to get subscribed to their email list in order to get your results. But those are two right off the top of my head where you can get a free evaluation. There are plugins you can use. The unfortunate thing about automation is a lot of companies will overpromise and underdeliver. They will tell potential users that this overlay, this automation option, can identify and either correct or tell you to correct 100% of accessibility issues on the website. And just like all those people who keep saying they can get you to the first page of Google rankings, and most of them are blowing hot air, anytime somebody tells you that their computer automation option can fix your website to 100% accessibility, run the other direction, because it's just not possible. And I honestly don't believe it ever will be possible strictly from automation. Now, on the other side of the coin, there's so much work to be done, especially with a website that's been out there for a while, that has multiple pages. And so automation can help a human reviewer to understand better what to look for and to become familiar with how to fix the errors. But in order to find a really good option, you want to do just enough research to know, do they have actual disabled people designing the app or the widget? Do these people continue to be part of the process of evaluating websites so they can give their app real-time input as to the current trends online with websites and all the different features that can be used in a website or an app? And is this information continuing to be added to the database of errors and fixes for those errors? The general accepted number that I keep hearing is that automation by itself can fix somewhere between 65 and 75% of errors on a website or app concerning accessibility. But there's going to be that other third or so that you're going to have to fix manually. And there's going to be a small percentage that if you don't have regular disabled users who are willing to let you know when there are problems with your sites or your content, you're probably not going to know about those errors, which is why I go back to, you probably have some consumers who have a disability. They may not have told you this because there is a fear that disclosing a disability can lead to not being treated as well as a customer. And there are some very negative examples of businesses where disclosing your disability has led to a less than stellar service. I think it was Airbnb settled a lawsuit over people using their platform that were charging disabled people more than anybody else that would rent the same property at the same time. So there's a fear of disclosing. I really wish that the technology could do like it does with ads. And of course, yes, it gets ads wrong all the time. I have no cat. For some reason, I keep getting ads for cat products. I have no idea why. But it would be cool, in my opinion, if the website could say, I have detected that you're using adaptive technology, and these are the issues that you should be aware of, or we are adjusting the website to better match up with the technology you're using. And of course, at some point, I'd love to get to that point where accessibility is such an ingrained part of the online world that we don't even notice it. I recently wrote in an article that accessibility would be great if it ever got to the point where it was like referees in a ball game, where the only time, where you never notice them unless it's that one occasion where they're getting something wrong, It'd be great if accessibility was that ingrained, but the problem is it isn't. It's somewhere between 3 and 5% of the net is considered 100% accessible at this time. And I personally think that we are part of the problem as well. I mean, the National Rehabilitation Act has been on the books for 50 years. The Americans with Disabilities Act has been on the books for 30 years. Now, they didn't build a lot of teeth into the Americans with Disabilities Act, and they didn't create a new protected class for disability. So the law itself is kind of hamstring, but we keep having new laws. We keep having new court cases. We still don't have a real growth, a real jump in the number of accessible websites on the internet. And to me, that's because we're spending our time on the wrong things. You know, I don't know if you or your audience can remember the Western movies, but you know, somebody with a mule or a donkey would say you have to use the carrot and the stick. We're real good at the stick.
Right.
We don't spend a lot of time with the carrot. And that's one of the things that's been really cool about my website and my approach to accessibility is so many people are telling me that we need more positive, non-threatening, collaborative voices in our community because we've been focused on compliance and we've been focused on shame, and we still aren't anywhere close to where we want to be. So this needs to be a partnership, which is why I try to help business owners wherever I can. I don't know if this is the point where you would want me to do it, but I want to make sure I do it. It's because your podcast especially tries to help the small business owners, people who I personally can relate to in many ways. If they will contact me through my website, I will review the homepage of their website for free. I'm not going to try to sell you nothing. I'm just going to share my information with you because I feel like I educate you. I make you more successful as a business owner. You're going to want to be even more accessible in the future. And that as a result is going to help many of the people that I call friends and family. So if y'all will just reach out to me through the website, theblindblogger.net or theaccessibilityadvantage.com. I'm in transition, y'all. My preferred website is theaccessibilityadvantage.com. You can contact me through either website. Just say that you saw me on this podcast, and I'll be more than happy to review your homepage for free and give you my reactions to what you got going on, and even tell you what I can tell from my side, because there may be some things on your website that my screen reader won't recognize, and that'll be something that we'll both find out together. So reach out to me through the website, and I look forward to connecting with you. And I really sincerely believe that making your products, services, websites, blogs, social media, email, making your content accessible, it is going to help you grow and sustain your business. It may not help you right away, but just like doing these podcast interviews, this doesn't help my business right away either. But I get to have a great conversation with a lovely woman who's a strong, solid business person. I get to share my knowledge and experience. And a few people today or at some point in the years to come will see this, and they'll either take those first steps on their own or they'll visit my website or something. So I look forward to talking to y'all, seeing where I can help. And I tell you what, I would really love for us to be able to come back a year from now and have some success stories based on how some of your audience embraced accessibility in their business.
That would be awesome too. And I appreciate you sharing that offer too, because as I said too, a lot of us just don't necessarily know that it's not working, right? We've talked to someone who we thought has, made it accessible. So I appreciate your sharing that offer, and I'm sure the listeners will as well. And I appreciate just this discussion, and bringing awareness to a topic that often is overlooked. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I want to make sure I tell you this because it's really important to me. I started doing podcast interviews in 2013 because I didn't have a good way to go out and meet people face to face. I've been blessed to share with hundreds of hosts and make many great friends. But the real important part here is I wouldn't have been able to tell my story, my continuing story, or my new story without people like you. So I want to thank you for being part of my continuing story and my continuing journey. And I look forward to us hopefully working together to help more of your business owners succeed with accessibility.
Perfect. I think that would be great if we can come back in a year, like you said, and see, what was the impact that was made. So maybe we can do that. So, and, even... Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even thinking about that when I started talking, but it almost sounds like I was pitching a return visit, but I wasn't. So,
but I do appreciate, your sharing all of that with us. And, to the listener, if you're tuning in too, and you have found this helpful, please reach out to us, reach out to Maxwell, let us know that you appreciated this topic. And I am going to have some bonus content that you can access through the show notes. But again, we just appreciate your taking the time to listen, and please share this episode with someone that that would find it helpful as well, because we both would appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.